Good afternoon, Sean here, Mountains Garage. It's been a week since I shot the series of videos on the race Turbo 400. And as usual, I thought and came across a few more things we could talk about. While it's fresh in my mind, why not? Let's do it. The fun way for me to rebuild transmissions is to always have one going in the background. Clean something one day, paint something another, assemble pieces of it as parts show up. So it doesn't just take a massive amount of time. When you have to rebuild one for somebody else or there's a timeline, then you got to sit there and grind it out. And I spent a whole career having to do that, and now I get to float around a little bit. And it's fun, like I said, just to have a back burner project, not like I don't have enough going on already. But I had this 475, this gray one laying around, and 475s are awesome. They're as strong as GM ever thought to make them. And if you watched my series of videos, for instance, the forward clutch, we left the center seal out. GM did that in the 475. That's probably where the idea came from. Somebody took one apart or two or five apart and said, hey, they left that out on purpose. This one has studs on the back. Usually there's only two. It's for the bracket that connects. There's a big ugly parking brake back here, weighs about a ton. That's how you know you got a 475, because if you got the big ugly parking brake, I guarantee you're going to have the straight cut gears and as good a stuff as they offered at the time. So I'm going to leave the studs on this one. This had 6 studs. That's the first one I'd seen like that. Usually there's, like I said, there's only 2, and I take them out because you can't set the case down, it falls over. There's nothing wrong with the studs. It's actually probably better than bolts, but having it wobble around and fall over all the time gets old. So this one sits just fine on all 6 studs, so I'm going to go ahead and use it as is. A while back I did my only really popular video was Turbo 400 tips, and in that I showed you a 475 and how you can go ahead and use it in a 2-wheel drive vehicle. You got to remove the big ugly parking brake, the ugly tail housing with 2 giant roller bearings in it. You got to buy a tail housing. That's like 80 bucks worth of goodness, but ready to go right out of the box, no messing around. It's a nice piece. And the output shaft. Let's go over the bench. I want to show you what I'm going to do to that. Laid out for your viewing pleasure once again is the lower gear unit from this TH400 with its straight cut planetaries, straight cut sun gear. You'll see 2 little divots cut in each planetary gear. When you first look at that and you take it apart, you say, oh my god, it's wore out. No, it's made like that. Every one of them has it machined in there. No worries. About the only thing non-heavy duty you're going to find back here. The silencer band, I'm not going to run it on this one. It's optional, we'll leave it out. A lot of times on the back of the center support, this one has a metal thrust washer. A lot of times they're plastic. The thrust washer between the reaction carrier, that's the reaction carrier, that's the output carrier, is almost 100% always plastic. However, the one that belongs on the other side in the output shaft is the same dimension. We're going to replace that with a roller bearing anyway. We already covered that. But here, you can replace the plastic one with the metal one. They're both about 61 thousandths. Direct replacement, no modifications, and that way everything back here has a metal thrust washer. The output shaft. This was originally a bolt-on yoke, in this case a brake drum. And there's an O-ring groove right there that the yoke used to slide over to help seal it up. We've covered that a couple of times. To convert it to 2-wheel drive use, you can do nothing. You can slide it all the way in the transmission when it's assembled, pull this back out, measure for your drive shaft. That's your travel. Done many, many, many like that. If you want to take the time and you got it apart and you have a lathe, you can cut that off, which I'm going to do. I cut that groove off and I cut this raised area here, so you get about another inch, and the yoke ends up going almost all the way in the tail housing, and then you pull it out and it just rides further in it's worth the effort. I'm going to go set her up in the lathe and cut it off. Over here in the trusty Logan lathe, it's pretty hard. It's probably hard on the carbide, but once you get through the outer layer, it's not bad. Let's try the yoke. All right, that's much better. She goes all the way down now. So I say I picked up about 1 inch of travel, which probably puts the yoke flush in the tail housing if you shoved it all the way in. While I'm crazy machining stuff, I didn't include this in the original video because let's call this class extra credit. These are things you can do. In fact, I think I have a name for my video. Because we covered 1,000 times about leaving that seal off, I actually put this whole thing in the lathe and I cut that groove right off, so this whole area is a big cavity. Not necessary, but a good mod. You see them, they sell them this way with that machined off, so why not? I got the technology, I might as well do it. Continuing to rave on about the TH475 and all its goodness, if it has a drawback, is that it has steel pistons. I like aluminum ones. So I've already ordered them for the center support and the forward and the direct clutch. And I actually had one aluminum piston laying around. Now in my case, both my forward drum and my direct drum have a check ball. So when I'm shopping for aluminum pistons, I don't have to worry about a check ball, but if it comes with one, that's okay too. Like I said, you can have two, but you can't have zero. So I had one piston laying around, and this was a 6 clutch. The TH475 comes with 5 in the forward clutch, 5 clutches, 6 in the direct, and still 3 in the intermediate. So I've ordered a power pack for the intermediate, so that'll be 4 clutch. I cut the piston, aluminum piston, down just like this one. This is about 600 thousandths height. So I chucked it up in the lathe and I cut the aluminum to 600 and did a little experimenting. And of course, with the thick steels that the direct clutch should have from the factory, I can get 6 clutches in, just like this, obviously. If I went to thin steels, I could almost get 7. I'd have to cut a little more off the piston, which would be doable, but I did a little research, and places that will sell you a direct drum all dressed out with clutches and steels, they knock the horsepower rating down 250 with the thinner steels. Think about it. So I'm going to be happy with 6 clutches, which is way overkill, and 6 thick steels. I'm going to cut the same piston. I've already tried it in the forward drum, and I can get 6 clutches with the thin steels that the forward typically has. So I'm going to have 6, 6, and 4. And clutch capacity should not be a problem. I never showed the finished product of the transmission we built in the video. I did fix my tail housing. I drilled out the broken bolt. Helicoiled it to 7/16 course. Painted, put the bushing in, and the bushing fit without any mods, which was great. I guess it depends on where the bushing comes from. And when I put a drain plug in this pan, I had put it on the flat because this area back here was kind of curved. Messing around with this one, it's a little bit flatter. This pan doesn't have a dimple like the other one for the magnet, but I was able to get the drain plug there. With this style, cheap 50-cent drain plug, there's always a nut on the inside. You're not going to get all the oil out of it. I guess if this was hanging down in the back, you'd get a lot of it, but at least it allows you to easily handle the pan instead of wrestling with all the oil. You've done it before. Tilt the pan, try to get most of the oil out of it, but gives you a leg up on that anyway. Also had a couple questions. Yes, the Transmission Specialties valve body that I used, and I've ordered another one for the gray one. It'll back up in neutral or reverse. You have to press the trans brake button either way. So in one way it's handy. You only got to pop it into neutral and push the button. On the other hand, in order to back up, you got to push a button. Something to get used to, but not a big deal. Final thoughts for today. The gray transmission, other than having the aforementioned straight cut planetaries, will be an exact twin to the green one. So I had to order another aluminum billet internal solenoid valve body, case saver, Teflon rings, aluminum pistons, on and on. If you're, a lot of people ask about how much it costs, budget $1,500 for parts, and you might have enough left over to buy a cheeseburger, plus the cost of the core. It's another great day out there. Hope you're having fun. Talk to you later.